We continue now at the top of Daf Vav Amud Aleph and Mesechet Yevamos. This is Yevamos Daf 106a. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Chalitza mutas ksheira. Let's say you have a chalitza that's done in a mistaken fashion, it's still going to be kosher. Eizuhi chalitza mutas. What's considered a chalitza that is done in a mistaken fashion? Amar Reish Lakish says, Kol she'omrim lo chalotzu v'kachat hakonsa. Any time where they tell the guy, do the chalitza, meaning have her remove your shoe, and through that you're going to marry her, meaning he doesn't realize the chalitza is actually to prevent him from marrying her. He thinks he's going to marry her through the chalitza. That's considered a mistaken chalitza, and it's still going to be kosher. So Amar le Rabbi Yochanan, so Rabbi Yochanan said to him, to Reish Lakish, Anisho, now I've already taught, Bein sheniskavin hu v'lo niskavin, whether you have a case where he had kavana for it, but she did not have kavana, Bein sheniskavin v'lo niskavin hu, or let's say she had the kavana for the chalitza, but he did not have kavana for chalitza. So I've already taught chalitza psula, that is considered a pasul chalitza, until both of them are having the proper kavana. And you're saying over here in this case by a mistaken chalitza where he thinks he's marrying her, that's a kosher chalitza. That wouldn't make any sense at all. That certainly would be no better than not having kavana, and therefore that should be pasul. Ella, rather, what really is a mistaken chalitza? Kol she'omrim lo chalotz lo al menashe titin loch masayim zuz. The case would be, let's say he says do the chalitza on the condition, or let's say we tell him that do the chalitza on the condition that she's going to give you 200 zuz. So there the chalitza is going to be kosher even if she does not fulfill the condition, even if she does not give the 200 zuz. Rashi over here says, even though she does not give him the money, it is still a kosher chalitza. We learn out all conditions from the conditions of Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven when they were going to fight the war with Klal Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael, and we learn to know she'efshel lahasan salidei shliach she'asa Moshe es Yoshua shliach loses lemes Eretz Hagilad, anything which you're able to appoint a shliach for that matter. So, for example, when it came to the situation of Eretz Yisrael, Moshe made Yehoshua his shliach. So then there you can make a condition. But if you have any situation where you can't use shlichus, could go in chalitza, for example, by chalitza, shlichus is not effective, so ein tanai moaba, so the condition is not effective either. This is the reason, and therefore, again, that's why over here, even though they made the chalitza on condition, if the condition is not fulfilled, the chalitza is still going to be effective. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Nami Hach, we have a brisa that supports this as well. Chalitza mutas ksheir, if you have a mistaken chalitza, it's kosher. Ezuhi chalitza mutas. What is a mistaken chalitza? Kol she'omrim chalotz lo al menashe titin loch masayim zuz. Anytime they tell him, do the chalitza on the condition that she'll give you 200 zuz. There was an incident, a particular woman, she fell in front of the Yavam to do Yibam. She'ein hagan la, but he wasn't proper for her. In other words, she didn't want to marry him. So they said to him, do the chalitza on the condition that she gives you 200 zuz. And that incident came in front of Rabbi Chia, and he said that it's kosher, meaning to say, he said that chalitza is effective. There was an incident where somebody came in front of Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Amar Allah, so he said to her, Biti Amodi, my daughter, stand up in order to do the Yibam or the Chalitza. So Amar Allah, so she said to him, Eima Yeshivasa Zuhi Amidasa, the sitting of this woman, meaning my sitting, that should be counted as my standing up. And Rashi over here explains, Biti Amodi, he said, my daughter, stand up, meaning Amodi Vihisiyav Milo. In other words, he was saying, stand up and let's do the Yibam. And so she said, Yeshivasa Mehisiyavim Lo, my sitting, meaning my refraining from doing the Yibam, Zuhi Amidasa, that's the best way to stand her up, meaning that's the best way to stand me up. Zui Takanasa, that is the best solution for. In other words, she was indicating that she did not want to do the Yibam, rather she wanted to do the Chalitza. And so the Gemara continues, Amar Lo, so he said to her, Yadatle, do you know him? Amar Layin, she said, yes, I know him. Mamonahu Dechazullah, V'kaboy Lamech Lamina, he just sees that I have money, and he just wants to consume my money. The only reason he wants to do Yibam is because he wants my money. So Amar Allah, so then he said to her, Lo nichalach, so is this not good for you? In other words, you don't want to marry this individual. Amar Le, so she said to him, Lo, no, I don't want to marry him. Amar Le, so then he said to him, Chalotz la, so he told the man, do the chalitza, uvekach hatakon, and through that you'll be able to marry her. This was a way to try to trick him into doing the chalitza. Lebasar the chalatzla, after he did the chalitza, Amar Le said to him, Hashta minach ifsalallah. So now at this point, since you just did a chalitza, now even though it wasn't a fully effective chalitza, but it was enough to make her disqualified to you. So now, chalotzla chalitza mal yasa kiyechi de tishtri lialma. Now do a real chalitza with her in order to permit her to others. In other words, now that you did that first chalitza, that was enough that you have no chance of marrying her. So now you might as well do a real chalitza with her so you can allow her to marry other people. And the Gemara continues, Bas Chamua de Rav Papa Nafla Lifnei Yavam. There was a story where the daughter of the father-in-law of Rav Papa, that would be the sister-in-law of Rav Papa, she fell before the Yavam to her brother-in-law. Again, She'ein Hagen-law, he wasn't proper for her. She didn't want to marry him. Azal Akave de Abaya, he came in front of Abaya, Amar Le, so he said to him, Chalutz lo v'kachat hakonsa. Same idea. He told the guy, do the chalitz, and through that you'll marry her. So Amar Le Rav Papa, so Rav Papa said to him, Lo savar lamar lohadam Rav Yochanan, but don't you hold of that which Rav Yochanan says, meaning that's not really a good chalitza. If a person does a chalitza thinking it's a marriage, that's not really an effective chalitza. So he said, Ve'elahechi eimale. So rather, what should I say to him? Okay, so how do I trick him? So Amar Le, he said, you should say to him as follows, Chalutz la menashe titilach masayim zuz. You tell the guy to do the chalitza on the condition that she gives you 200 zuz. That would be a better way to trick an individual into doing chalitza. Lebazar the chalatzla. Now, after he did the chalitza in that fashion for the 200 zuz, so Amar La, so he said to her, Zil havle. In other words, Abaya said to the woman, go and give him the money. In other words, even though the chalitza is good, regardless of whether you fulfill the condition, but at the end of the day, you promised 200 zuz, you should give him the 200 zuz. So Amar Le, so then Rav Papa said to Abaya, that's not even true either. In other words, she doesn't need to give him anything because Meshatani Bachav Delay, because she just did a trickery to him. She could say, I was joking with you. I had no real intention of giving you the money. That wasn't the purpose over here. Therefore, I'm not obligated in any sense to give you the money. And he brought a support for this. Milo Tanya, didn't we learn in a brisa? And if somebody is fleeing from prison, and then there's like a bridge in front and there's a toll. He says to him, toll dino v'havireni. So he says, take a dinar and cross me over the water. Maybe it's a bridge, maybe it's a boat that's going across the water. So he says, take a dinar, meaning much more. The prisoner offers much more than normally would be offered in order to cross over. So Ein Lo Ela Schara, the halacha is really that he doesn't have to pay him the dinar. He was just promising him a dinar because he needed to get out of there, but really he just gives him the normal wage of crossing over this crossing. So you see from this brisa, Alma, don't we see from this brisa? Amar Le Meshatani Bach, that he can say, no, I was not serious when I said that to you. It was just something that was necessary. Hachanami over here also, Meshatani Bach, so too she can say, I was Meshatani Bach. It wasn't something that was serious, and therefore I don't actually owe you the money. So now Abaya was impressed with all of Rav Papa's halachic arguments. So Amar Le, so he said to Rav Papa, Avochecha, he said, where's your father? Amar Le B'masa, he's in the city. Imocha Hecha, he said, where's your mother? Amar Le B'masa, so he said, she's in the city as well. Ya'iv B'hu Einei V'u Shechivan. So then Abaya, in a sort of jealousy, he looked upon him with like a kind of an evil eye or a jealous eye, and that caused Rav Papa's parents to die. Rashi over here says, Amar Le Abaya Le Rav Papa, Abaya said to Rav Papa, Avochecha Kolomar, what Abaya was saying is, it seems, Kimedumani Sheyesh Lach Avoim. It seems to me that it was unlike Abaya, you have a father and a mother to support you. Smuchen Lach L'sapek Tzarchecha, they must be around to support your needs. Lefikach Kamechadin and Shmaitach, that's the only way that you've become so sharp. And then Abaya had a certain jealousy towards Rav Papa, and again that caused Rav Papa's parents to die. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbon, and the rabbis taught, chalitza muta is kasher. If you have a chalitza that's mistaken, that is kosher. Get muta pasul. But if you have a get that is mistaken, that is pasul. Chalitza mu'usa is psul. If you have a chalitza that is coerced, that is pasul. Get mu'usa kosher. But if you have a get that is coerced, that is going to be kosher. And the Gemara says, hechidami, what exactly is the case when we talk about coerced? Idam arotzani, if the person says, I am willing, so afilu chalitza nami, so even chalitza should be okay. Vilo amarotzani, and if the person does not say I'm willing, so get namilo, so by a get also, it should not be good. And so the Gemara says, Hachi Kamar, here's really what we mean to say, chalitza muteis liolam kosher. When it comes to a mistaken chalitza, that's always kosher. V'get muta liolam pasul. When it comes to a mistaken get, that's always pasul. Chalitza museis, v'get musa. When it comes to a chalitza that's coerced, or a get that's coerced, zimnin kosher v'zimnin pasul. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Hada amar rotzani, hada lo amar rotzani. In this case, it's when the person says, I am willing. There we say it's kosher. In a case when the person does not say, I'm willing, then it's not going to be kosher. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Yakriv Oso, when it talks about karbanos, it says that he brings the carbon, Malamin Shekofan Oso. That comes to teach us that we even force him to bring a carbon that he is obligated to bring. So Yachal Bal Karcha, so I might think we're allowed to make him bring a carbon against his will. Talmud Lomar L'Ritzona, the pasuk says no, it has to be by his will. So Haketzat, so how so? Kofan Oso, at Sheyoma Rotzani, when it comes to karbanos, we can force him until he says I am willing. V'chein Atamotze B'gitei Noshim, and the same thing is true when it comes to a get. Kofan Oso at Sheyoma Rotzani, we can force the individual until he says I am willing. And Rashi over here says, get muta pasul, so he said again, a mistaken get is pasul. That's talking about a condition like we said before. Emeina mekayem is to know. What it means is that if the condition is not fulfilled, so then the get is going to be pasul. Unlike chalitza, by chalitza, if the condition is not fulfilled, the chalitza is still okay. But by get, if the condition is not fulfilled, the get is not good. The efshel get al yedei shliach, same reason as above, a get can be done through a messenger. Shomer l'shnayim kisvu tunu get l'ishti. For example, if a person says to two people, write and give a get to my wife, that's okay, they can write it and give it. So you see that, therefore you can use a shliach by get. So to a tanai is effective by get. Hilkach dami l'tanai b'nei gad u'mahani b'tanai. Therefore it's similar to the case of b'nei gad and b'nei Reuven, which is the case that we learn out all the halachas of tanaim from, and therefore again a tanai is going to be effective by a get. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava, Amar Rav Sechora, Amar Rav Huna. Rava says in the name of Rav Sechora, in the name of Rav Huna, Cholzin afal pi she'ein makir, and we're allowed to do a chalitza even though we don't recognize the participants. Mimanin afal pi she'ein makir, and we're also allowed to do a miyun. Again, that's a situation where a girl who was a minor got married and then she refuses the marriage. We're allowed to do a miyun even though we don't recognize the participants. Lefikach, therefore, ein kosvin get chalitza. We don't write a document to attest to the chalitza, elim kein makir, and unless we really do recognize the participants. Similarly, vein kosvin get miyun, elim kein makir, and we don't write a get, a document of miyun, of refusal, unless we recognize the participants. The chashinon lebezin toin, because we're afraid that there might be a bezin that makes some kind of a mistake in this issue, since it's possible that it was done without recognizing the participants. And Rashi over here explains, Cholz and Afa Bishain Makir, and we do Chalitz even though we don't recognize Yavam v'Yevama, even though we don't recognize the brother-in-law and the sister-in-law, Shabol Lefanenu Lachlotz, they come in front of us, they want to do Chalitza. Veinanu Makir and Boshu Yevama, and Iskakin Lem Bezin v'Cholz, and we don't recognize, we don't know the relationships of these people, still Bezin will do the Chalitza. Umeman and Bezin Iskakin Lemion Afa Bishain Makir, and same thing when it comes to Mion, the Bezin will do the Mion even though they don't recognize the participants. Lefikach, therefore, Holvin is Kakin Lohem, since we're going to do the process anyway, even though the bezin doesn't recognize them. So ein kozvin get chalitza means to say as follows: Eidim haroim bechalitza v'miyon. Let's say there are witnesses there that witness the court doing the chalitza and the miyon. Ein kozvin v'nosin law lios biyada lizuchus elim kein makir and shein yavam v'yavama. Those eidim should not write a document to attest to the fact that there was a chalitza or a miyon unless they actually do recognize the participants. They can't rely on the fact that the bezdin recognizes the participants because they might not. V'hashta dein kozvin elim kein makir. Now that we have the halacha that we'll never write a document unless really we do recognize what's going on, so now nothing bad will come of it. Because if she doesn't have the document, it's worthless anyway. So the point is, even though the bezin will do the ceremony, but we're not going to write a document, and therefore it's not going to be practical for her to utilize the ceremony, we're not going to write that document unless we recognize the participants. Again, as the Gemara said, Chashina lebezin toin, because we're afraid a bezin will make a mistake. Meaning, let's say the edim do write that they saw this chalitza, and now that document comes in front of another bezin, they might mess up. We're afraid she'll show this document to another bezin, and they'll rely on it, and they're not going to inspect him. If this individual was actually the Yevama, imlav or not. So they'll let her remarry. They'll make a mistake because they might not realize that what's going on over here is the first bezdin did it without recognizing. They're not going to understand. They're just going to see the get and they're going to assume. They're going to see the document and they're going to assume everything is fine. And the Gemara continues, V'Rava didei omer. Now Rava himself, he says, Ein cholzen elim kein makir, and we would never perform a chalitza ceremony unless we recognize the participants. V'ein memanin elim kein makir, and we would never perform a miyun ceremony unless we recognize the participants. Lefikach, therefore, kosvin get chalitza, we do write a document of chalitza, afal pi shein makir, and even though we do not recognize the chosvin get miyun, and again, the edim are willing to write, or they're allowed to write a document of miyun, afal pi shein makir, and even though they do not recognize, v'lo And we're not concerned about Bezin making a mistake, because again, if you see it happening according to Rava, if you see it happening in a Bezin, you know that everything is fine. You know that they recognize the participants. Rashi over here says, according to Rava, since we do chalitza only, we will not do chalitza if we don't recognize. We only do it when we recognize. Therefore, kosvin get chalitza edem sharosh chalza. Therefore, edem who see a chalitza yicholun lichtov la. They're allowed to write the document v'yafa b'shein makir, even though they don't recognize. V'lo chayshinu an shemato bezin b'halacha zu. We are not concerned with the fact that maybe Bezin made some kind of mistake. Lo mar cholz and afa b'shein makirin v'cholz u'lo mimi she'eno yevamo. We're not afraid that maybe Bezin is going to make some kind of mistake in this halacha and say that the chalitza was done even though they do not recognize the person, and then again maybe there was a chalitza that was done with somebody who wasn't the Yevama. We're not going to be afraid again according to Rava, because a chalitza will never be done unless they recognize the participants. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kovav Amud Beis.